The Gospel of Gold by G.S. Lewis. Ultimately, they came up with no plans. As Alan informed the trio while they ate, they had done in a week's time what ought to have taken a month, trekking a rough circle through the region. They had foregone any proper Pokemon training after Azalea Town, placing priority on covering distance. Furthermore, ever since Gold's encounter with Karen, their sleeping pattern had been thrown off. As a result, to no one's surprise, Gold, Marina, and Jinichi were burned out. Without really meaning to, they all drifted off into what they supposed would be a quick catnap. It wasn't quick. They slept for hours, leaving their host to guard them until late into the evening. Marina must have woken shortly before the other two, for she hissed, "Hey, guys! Wake up!" Gold jerked awake with a start from a dreamless sleep. What? He asked groggily, trying to get his bearings. "It's Bruno!" exclaimed Alan. "Come over here!" Bruno? Still heavy with sleep, but now charged with adrenaline, Gold hastened past Jinichi's stirring form, straight to the window. Taking care to keep out of sight, he peeked through from the side of the glass. Darkness had crept over the valley town, augmented by the shadow of the mountains. In the dying light, however, Gold could still make out the bulky form of the fighting elite's broad shoulders and bare back. "Well, there he is," prompted Alan. "What's the play?" "We don't have a play. We never decided on one," said Marina faintly, rubbing her eyes. "Better just sit tight and watch what he does." Gold watched, paying heed to Bruno's body language. At first, the big man simply looked up at the massive Pokemon who dwarfed him, yet served him with deferential submission. Onyx's stony head shifted to the ruined Pokemon Center's entrance, drawing Bruno's attention. Gold could hear nothing, nor see the expression on Bruno's face, but his mind filled in the blanks easily enough. He knew Bruno was looking at the footprints embossed in the glassy ground. Any second, the elite would realize they belonged to his Machamp, and he would guess his Pokemon's fate. What would he do then? Would he unleash a cry of rage that echoed through the mountains all the way to Ecruteak? Would he begin rampaging through houses and forcibly interrogating citizens until someone gave up Gold's location? Or would he simply recall Onyx and retreat with cold indifference? What happened next defied Gold's expectations. Bruno's proud and upright posture went slack, so that he appeared suddenly to have aged decades in a moment. His hands rose to his face, and he dropped to his knees, doubled over. At this universal sign of brokenness and defeat, all of Gold's initial misgivings fell away. Ruthless as Bruno might be, here and now he was drowning in a sea of grief. It didn't seem right to spy on him in this state. Gold felt a sudden and overwhelming desire to act. "Gold!" yelped Jinichi in astonishment from behind him. "What are you doing?" Before he knew it, Gold had snatched up his stick, striven the length of the room, and put his hand on the doorknob. "I'll be back," he said quickly, pushing open the door. "Don't leave!" Marina insisted, in a shrill voice just below screaming. "The other elites are still out there!" "I know," whispered Gold, sliding out through the threshold. "But I want to console him." As soon as he shut the door, Gold knew in the back of his mind that he was making a tactical mistake. If Bruno had come back out on his own power several hours after confronting Lance, it almost certainly meant that the Dragon Master had fallen or fled. This, in turn, meant that Bruno's allies had probably regrouped as well, and were on the move at the same time. Bruno might have gone with them, if not for this unexpected delay. There might even be someone with him right now. "Why do I never think these things through?" Gold demanded of himself. "I could be walking right into a trap!" It didn't matter. Though his mind badgered him, he marched doggedly forward until he was close enough to hear the deep, heaving sobs of the giant man. Bruno lay prostrate on the ground, one hand covering his face, and the other raking great tufts of dirt out of the ground. Onyx, who had been watching the clawed trench deepen, looked up at Gold's arrival. The Pokémon gave a soft bellow. It carried no hint of threat, but only of acknowledgement. Bruno lifted his head at the noise, and Gold saw the ruddy, tear-stained face gaze upon him. His sobbing ceased at once, replaced with heavy breathing.
"Have you come to gloat?"
he asked, in a voice that was thick, yet empty. "No," said Gold, sitting down on the ground. In the semi-darkness, Bruno's expression wasn't clear, but Gold was amazed to see, or thought he saw, childlike guilt stamped upon his features. He had an odd intuition that, as this fallen man beheld him, he did not see a 13-year-old boy. Something far more profound was present.
"Have you come to finish me off?"
Bruno asked again. "No," said Gold again, looking at him with surprise. He was trying to be as disarming as possible. Where were these questions coming from?
"Now's your best chance,"
Bruno continued, pressing the matter.
"I have no Pokémon left but one, and I see now that you could sublimate him too if you had a mind."
"Master Bruno," said Gold, as firmly as he could, "I am not going to indulge you in your worldview. And my God, I am not going to kill you. Do you think I take pleasure in the death of the wicked? Do you think I wanted this?" He motioned to the glassed footprints. Bruno's eyes flicked back and forth from them.
"Then why have you come?"
he asked. Gold paused and took a moment to consider his answer. "To tell you that I'm not your enemy. Now, particularly, after your defeat, so that you're more likely to believe me, and not beforehand, lest you think I merely feared your strength. After all, it seems important to you." Bruno gave a hollow laugh.
"Having lost, I've got no right to say anything," he said bitterly. "But it looks like Karen was correct. I guess it really is true that strong and weak Pokémon are only a selfish perception. Machamp shouldn't have lost to you, but he did."
"No, she was wrong," Gold admitted. "Machamp didn't lose in the earthly sense. He overwhelmed us all. It turns out that some Pokémon actually are stronger than others."
"But you..."
Bruno stopped and had to work his jaw for a moment to continue.
"You destroyed him."
"A contest of power between dinosaurs becomes irrelevant in the wake of a meteor shower," answered Gold. "And with men, when a flood comes to drown them. You, who have trained your body and your Pokémon to their extreme limits, surely understand that your earthly power is still limited." Bruno's face hardened, and he turned his back.
"I require no lectures about strength," he said brusquely. "If that is why you came, then go now. Let me mourn in peace."
"I am not the meteor shower or the flood," continued Gold, disregarding Bruno's dismissal. "But I serve a power beyond them, beyond all limits, including death. You may loathe to hear it, because it puts you on practically the same level as a pipsqueak like me, yet here we are.
Then what is the point of becoming strong?
Bruno roared suddenly, his voice tinged with fresh anguish.
All of my life, my Pokemon and I have worked hard to be the best we could be. It was a noble thing. Deny me my victory. Deny me the opportunity to bury my first companion, but do not deny me in this!
Gold stared at the great mountain of a man before him, so powerful and yet powerless, raging yet pleading at the same time. A sudden epiphany struck him. Here was Bruno's inner child, who had long been buried under decades of confidence building and self-possession, but who now emerged in the crisis of identity and loss. He was vulnerable, even more so than Marina had been, and the next few moments would potentially determine his remaining life's path, if it could be altered. I do not deny your calling, Gold said softly. Strength is not an end in itself, but rather becoming strong was the meaningful part. He looked up at Onyx, who watched over them motionlessly, like a sentinel stone statue. That's something you shared in with your Pokémon. You dreamed together, suffered together, endured together, never alone. Again, I suspect I'm telling you what you know. Bruno visibly tightened his fist.
Stop speaking as though you know me. You don't know the first thing about me.
Gold looked down. I'm out here, he said, because I know that you are still capable of weeping. At least for your own Pokémon. I would not have dared approach you otherwise.
And what will you do now that you have seen my tears?
Asked Bruno hollowly.
Will you wipe them from my eyes? Will you drink them?
I told you, I'm not your enemy. Gold looked back up at the fallen master's face, obscured by his unkempt hair. But life is about the shared experience. I came also to mourn with you. Bruno stared at him incredulously.
You can't be serious.
I'm responsible for his death in part, Gold persisted, his stomach clenched. And I only ever knew him briefly as a monster whose sole purpose was to kidnap me. The least I can do is attempt to understand what he was really like in the time you knew him. His words hung in the air, beckoning Bruno to answer. The man's back was still turned, but his eyes lingered on Gold, and wonder shone in them.
You are a child,
he murmured resignedly.
But you speak like someone who is far older.
With that, Bruno put down his arm and slid his body around so that he was fully facing Gold. His body language was more receptive, less hostile, and he seemed to regain some of his dignity.
Machamp,
he began wistfully,
was not always a champion, but for as long as I knew him, he was always determined to prove himself.